We're waiting for Ruth to come inside the studio. One of the reasons I came to think about publishers and writers, I saw an award-winning novel by a Japanese author where she used artificial intelligence for 5% of that award-winning material. And what happened was a huge debate. A lot of people said she should give her award back. But we're going to discuss not the author, but what is your material versus what is plagiarism. Let's say if you win something for the novel, would you stand for it still? That's also a good question. When you win something, it should be something that, yes, I accomplished. Maybe that feeling lacked a bit, that it was made by 5% copyrighted material, because that is what plagiarism, what you call it, is. I'm going to ask Ruth more about that when she comes into here.
I'm Ruth. You should be able to find me if you go Ruth at Nexa.
Oh, yeah.
And my most recent book is Grandma's on the Roof, out in about 10 days. And my previous book was, I didn't grab that one, Winning the Lottery. And because some people have written a lot of books about actually winning the lottery, how to rig it and everything else. Mm-hmm. To find it, you want to put Winning the Lottery Ruth into Amazon or Winning the Lottery Marco Island. And it's a tale of retirees navigating the waters of Marco Island. Mm-hmm. And it's actually the first story I wrote about Hurricane Ian. And then the second one is Grandma's on the Roof, which combines both Marco Island and Cape Coral, Florida, which was hit much worse than Marco Island was. And in between the two is Naples, Florida, where I actually evacuated to. My mom lives there. And it's interesting that I actually dedicated this book to my sister and my brother, who there were 5 of us all living in the area of the hurricane. And it turns out that the 3 of us that had the least going on in our lives had no damage. Whereas my brother, whose son had just died, he had his house almost devastated. My sister, who had just completed chemotherapy for cancer, her home was devastated. And it's just horrifying that the people who were most affected by the hurricane were the ones that had more tragedy prior to it too. So it's just really sad. And there's no way you can truly know what it's like to go through a hurricane, because just 1 mile away, it can be completely different.
Yeah. So that's also a way to picture that the longer we are from the real self-experienced events, which we are when we are distancing from nature in the technology also, the less we get to know exactly how it feels and how it was, right?
Right.
And it's the same thing. When I was in New York, it was the big Hurricane Sandy. You remember that?
Yeah.
I was there during that. And I was in the Upper West Side, Manhattan, so I was very safe there. Well, kind of, because I was in a very old, big building. But I remember somebody walking up from 4th, whatever, all the way. Her apartment was flooded. And she told me on video that this reminded her how important human contact is, because she had contact with nobody else than those next door. Everything was shut down, electricity, everything. And the only thing she had was the next one that she had to rely on for those very dramatic hours, And so, like you said, you turned a life experience into books. And this might be very relevant for people who today fear for going there into nature, experiencing, and we need those authors that are giving us these stories.
Well, in my book, Grandma's on the Roof, a lot of it has to do with Hurricane Ian. Yeah. Now, I started off in Marco Island. We were told to evacuate, so I went to Naples. It's only, 20 miles away. And then the hurricane hit hardest in Fort Myers, Cape Coral, that area, which was another 20 miles away. Mm-hmm. Well, the title of the book, Grandma's on the Roof, actually came from the fact that while I was in Naples, a friend of mine texted me and said her grandmother was on the roof. Is there anything you can do to help? And when I looked up her grandmother's address from where I was staying, it was only a mile away. Ooh. And I didn't have any of the flooding that this other person was having. And so in writing the story, and it's actually kind of a funny story, I had finished writing my first book, Winning the Lottery, and my editor said, there's not enough drama. You need more to it. You need more drama. And I go, I can't. We just went through a hurricane. I can't think. I can't do anything. And it's like, yeah, there's the drama. So, I finished the book, Winning the Lottery, which takes place in Marco Island. And on Mother's Day, Grandma's on the Roof is coming out. But the scene where she's in the worst part of the hurricane, I didn't know what that personally was like. And so I used a story that my sister, when she went through a hurricane over 15 years ago, her children were small. Her and her whole family had to be in the bathtub and put a mattress over their heads because they weren't sure what was going to happen.
Well, yeah.
So my character is in a bathtub with her dog, fearing for her life. Is this going to be the end of it? And so it's
nice inspiration there. I mean, nobody could have thought about that without having someone telling you the story.
Right. Another experience, we were actually walked outside my mom's home during the hurricane and we're watching what was going on because where we were, we weren't getting the winds, even though the hurricane was right there. And somebody said to me, well, a branch could have come and slit your wrist. It's not safe to be out there, slit your throat. Yeah. And so I put that in there too. Just these little things that happen, they're real. People experience them and you gather everyone's information and put it into one situation.
Yeah, and also real life is usually more dramatic than fiction life. If you get it from real life, you know that it's dramatic because if it's something happening to you in nature catastrophe or an accident, whatever, maybe people would get a new experience of life when they read about something so close to you. That's what we also forget when we discuss of artificial text, is that since it doesn't have any pre-experience of what is produced, it's not so easy to live into the text, to live again the story. And maybe you remember something from your childhood when you read something, or something that you can relate to, that you also have experienced some similar events. That's more or less, it's better when you hear from a real person that has that has a story and an experience. Yeah,
and they've also done studies about false memories, and I see this all the time with my husband and I. That he'll start telling a story, and it's like, well, that happened to somebody else, not to you,
Okay.
It starts, you tell it enough and it becomes real in your brain. Mm-hmm. And similar situation, I was telling a story about my sister was so nervous about her wedding, and she had a strapless wedding dress that when she stepped out of the dressing room, she had lost so much weight that the dress just fell off of her. And so, me being well endowed, I took my bra off. She put it on, stuffed the bra so that now the dress would fit. And when she walked down the aisle, her future husband was like, wow, she looks really good. I had been telling this story for years, and my sister's like, that didn't happen to me. And I'm like, yeah. And she's like, no. And she showed me her wedding picture, and it wasn't strapless. And I was like, well, who was it?
Oh my gosh.
Things that, your brain does all sorts of things with memory. And if you can take those little memories and put them into fiction, or even a memoir should be written as if it were fiction, because you don't really know. And you want it to be dramatic and have an arc, and, people enjoy it.
Yeah, I mean, what you're into here, when you experience your surroundings and your nature, like you said about Hurricane Ian, that gives the story the authenticity you want to express and get the feedback about. And the communication is different. You know that. And I think that if you relate to the artificial author, so going to represent this as a newspaper or whatever, it's not the same, right?
Yeah.
My suggestion as a writer is you want something to be unique and true to you as possible.
Yeah.
Being a writer, it's first of all, it's very passionate to you. Whatever you're pulling out, you are taking something from within you and bringing it to the world. And the last thing you want is something else to change what you're really trying to say.
Yeah, and the experience. It's the same with films. When you write scripts, it's like the realism, is sometimes fiction, but it's made by people who can relate to those stories in everyday life. It's the art of being a writer, right? It's like, why are people writers if they don't have a story to tell? That's something I'm thinking about. People just want the quick money. If they want to just publish something, then they're thinking of the final step of the process. That is the product that comes out. In the end, we live in a very money-driven society, so it's all about the revenue. But when you are an author by blood and sweat and tears, that's basically what it is. Then you have the drive to communicate your story as the priority. It's like you have something to tell, or you don't have anything to tell. It's basically, that's what it is, right? I mean, when we think about writers, why are people writing? Is it today to get published and get known, or get something out there because they want an extra income? Or is it like you having this reel memorized and making the memories come alive again? Yeah, what art is about, right? It's a process, not only the result, the product.
Right.
Yeah, because it's about what is a writer. That's something we have to think about when we discuss this issue, right?
Yeah, you want to build a relationship with your readers. You want them to come back for book number 2.
Yeah, you have the number 3 and the 4 in your head already.
Right.
And we talked about J.K. Rowling here. Like you said, she didn't go by her real name. The only J.K. was the only thing they remember. We have to think about that she might be representative for all of us who can't today be as authentic as we want to be. Like her story, she had to push through. People who are watching, they might not even know her real name.
Joanne. And I had to look it up.
Yeah.
So if you say, this great author, Joanne Rollins, it's like, who's that? Everyone knows her as J.K. She couldn't be published as a female author. They want it generic. They want people to assume it's written by a male. And that's been the case for centuries. I think in the Victorian era, dozens of famous authors that were later discovered that they weren't male because they went by initials or, some fake name.
So do you think also, because I'm thinking here that really this tells a lot about how we are relating to art or to writers in general. I mean, for generations, we don't take them seriously enough as real person that lived and did this for us. It's like we are transferring this to the digital world now, that it can be written by a bot, but before we did the same thing with organic people. We just gave them some nicknames, and those nicknames are not who they really wanted to be. It's just that how they could push forward was to say, okay, I'm under this name, but might not be the whole story. And the same thing is happening again. We're reproducing the same story comes again. The same history repeats itself.
Right. Yeah? Right. Yeah, they're really famous authors. Well, even William Shakespeare. Yeah. He had his students writing his books after a while. You get that formula going, and it's like, okay. And there's some current authors as well that
true.
Wrote so many successful stories that now they turn it over to students, and it's like, okay, this is close enough, go ahead, publish it under my name because my name is the famous one.
And that might be the norm set by the publisher. I'm not so sure. It might be just a societal expectation that's okay. We're gonna mass produce this or make money out of you, so we're doing this. Mm-hmm. Yeah, this group comes together. I heard Hans Zimmer, for instance, the composer, the film composer. Hans Zimmer. He doesn't compose all his soundtracks. That's what I heard, because I did some composition, and he has a team of smaller composers that helps him create sometimes the sound. I'm not gonna talk about Hans Zimmer in an official podcast, but that's a rumor. I just want to say it's out there, but it's the same thing, that we might not take it seriously enough, that from an author perspective or from an artist, it's something self-driven, but it's not been seen that way. It's seen like a commodity for the big publishers,
right?
Or the ones to use others. Yeah, we're using people again. We have to search for the original work now with critical thinking, because we can't find it anymore in the algorithms that they are producing. So a lot of the quality books in Amazon is drowning into this machine.
Yeah, and it's one of the things I noticed was I was looking for a title for my book, and I had about 50 different titles that I was searching. It's like, okay, silver linings. What comes up if I do that? If I do aging in place, different titles. So I'm plugging all of these in, and I found a couple of books that were only 3 pages long. It's like, what is this? Why? And it was kind of like back in early 2000 where people were buying web domains. Oh, I'm going to buy the web domain John Smith. And therefore, if John Smith wants a domain in his name, he has to pay me $10,000. And so, that's what they're doing. They're buying up book titles. They're trying to get you just to click on it. Oh, that sounds like a great book title. And you get it, and it's 3 pages. That's garbage.
Yeah. Definitely not from someone who really wants to communicate with their audience. It's someone who probably just wants the quick, cheap money. And I think that's also the trend now on the internet. A lot of network marketing going on, a lot of people who wants the fast cash, and the publishing industry is the next now coming. Yeah. And the music industry is the same. Unfortunately, a lot of the real ones out there, like you or people who I met in the forum, they get not as seen as before because they have to struggle their way. A lot of the books that you already published there, like you said in the beginning, you have to make sure to sign it that this is real because it was not produced by AI. And so nowadays, some original authors, they do this to make sure that the reader can receive that, okay, this was not made by a copy from someone.
Right.
Which, I feel for the authors that wants to publish something from themselves, that they need to also do this. It's kind of sad that you have to say this is original work, because otherwise people will think, oh, this was good. I don't know exactly if it's fake or not, but you want the reader to know it was from you.
Absolutely.
Asked you in the beginning, if you found something online that you thought was from you, that was published but wasn't, because it was someone copying something from you, right?
That they took the title in my name, that if somebody searched me, it's like, oh, get a free copy of her book. And so you click on the link and there's no free copy of my book. They just wanted, you to click on there so they can gather your data from the internet, the cookie.
Oh, yeah. That's something we have to warn people. Of course, most people have the common sense to not click on every link you're getting, but we have to repeat the same thing all over, because nowadays, everyone who publishes something online on Google, it comes there in the front page. Anyone can grab anything and say that they are from those people.
Well, it's funny that we're talking about this, and we haven't even talked about the beginning of my book, where the first 7 chapters are about her getting scammed.
Yeah.
She gets a phone call from her granddaughter saying, I need your help. And the grandma's like, what do you need? And then this man comes on the line and says, she's in jail for public drunkenness. And then the grandmother ends up, giving money to get her out of jail and sending money so she could get a plane ticket home. And as the grandmother is searching on Facebook, she sees everything that the daughter said that she heard through the phone. So it was actually her granddaughter's voice, but they copied it from the internet. And she's like, hi, I need your help. These orphans need money, And so they took the I need your help. And then another video is, happy birthday, Grandma. So I need your help, Grandma. And that's what they do. And
you were kind of visioning before this happening that you knew this is going to happen someday.
Well, it has. My parents, I was in their home when they got a call saying, your cousin is in jail in Bangladesh or Marrakesh or someplace. And my cousin traveled around the world. So while they're talking to this guy, they sent an email to my aunt and uncle. It's like, hey, is Steve there? And it's like, yeah, he's here. It's like, okay, so it's a scam. And it's just...
that this can become a great fiction, but it's still happening in real life.
Exactly.
It's the reality. Okay, you made a fiction of a more organic, let's say, phone call, and that's the older times, things are happening now more in the smaller data that we're handling.
Well, the reason I wrote this particular section was I had just finished winning the lottery and wanted to do the sequel with a different location. And I went to a seminar about mortgage fraud. And they're talking about all these things. And I'm like going, oh my gosh. And I came out and I wrote the first 7 chapters like in one sitting.
That's creative. That's great. That's the way. That's the way. Because you work in the business, that's one thing. You know about the fraud, that's also very important. You know about the scammers that are trying to be what you are. You know about the customers, what they can easily be catched or caught in, that they don't use their brain or they get scammed. I really wanted to read that book when you talk about it, because this is what being a writer is about, in my opinion. On the same time, you're teaching people a bit about scams, frauds.
Winning the lottery, the reason I wrote that book was I was trying to explain reverse mortgages to people.
Yeah.
And I read a book on reverse mortgages, and, you know, I am into this. I love mortgages. I love my industry. But this book was putting me to sleep. It was a factual, you know, it's complicated subject, everything else. And I'm like, how is the everyday consumer going to understand this if I'm being put to sleep? So I started writing it as a way to teach people how reverse mortgages work. And of course, then once you start dealing with the characters, the book becomes, you know,
a story, let's say, a fiction. But that's also the way to do it. I think if you have some knowledge about an issue, because my uncle is an author, he does the same, he is a scientist. You know, not everyone wants to read a very long science, let's say, text, you know, and put it into fiction, you know, make a storyline about characters, put the knowledge that you have into there, and you can get it out there for a reader. Because, you know, winning the lottery, talking about that, it's also very typical that people get, if you get an email, today's lot, you won something, it's always the first thing they are writing, the scammers, you know. A lot of people, unfortunately, still today, even though we know so much about the internet, they still run into that trap because of the big expectation of the industry of winning a lottery or becoming a millionaire, or all the glorification of this fast money industry. Winning large money is kind of like a status symbol.
Right.
It's become that because people maybe don't want to go into the hard route, which you also did with the hurricanes and everything that happened to you, in order to produce something, to escape those kind of hard, difficult paths. Let's go the fast way, you know, with Amazon. Let's mass produce a lot of lottery commercials, though. You won, or you want to win this trip to paradise. So people get tricked still, even though we are in a postmodern society.
Right.
Become this habit of species.
P.T. Barnum said there's a sucker born every minute.
Yeah. It doesn't get easier from now on if we're going to the artificial intelligence gonna do the same thing with humanity that we've been through, maybe in even larger scale, you know. So yeah, stick to your writing, and I hope to see more of your books, and we can talk later, maybe.
That sounds great. I'm definitely available.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, nice talking to you, and meeting you the first time. Hearing about your books makes me more curious about those titles, especially.
All right, sounds good.